All right, today in this video, I'm going to be drawing and painting a bull shark. And these are, I already drew the pencil on the canvas here. This is about I want to say it's a 20 by 24, somewhere around there for this shark. So it's a decent size painting. And I decided I wanted to use the Posca pens because in the past I've used, and currently I use a lot of ink. And the problem with the ink is it doesn't soak into the canvas like it does paper, so it doesn't really get that waterproofing-like ability that you normally would get from ink, especially India inks. And I just wanted to try the Poscas and see if I can get that illustration without it smudging everywhere, because I was going for more like a marker or watercolor-like consistency or effect. And I like a lot of different styles, if that's not apparent. So I was trying to combine old school style. Like, when I say old school, I'm talking literally hundreds of years ago, impressionist style, wearing all that kind of stuff. I guess I said hundreds of years ago. I don't know if this is 100 years ago, but, a much older style of painting using impressionism, abstract where I can, and kind of solid color, but also some smooth transitions between them as well. So kind of mixing a lot of different ideas. So comic-like or cartooning or animation, that's where I have a lot of experience, but also like my mindset is a lot of times when I'm illustrating. And here I'm using a kneaded eraser here, trying to get some of those drawing lines off of there, because I feel more confident using a pencil to draw. If I make mistakes, it's fine, not a big deal. Like proportional mistakes or something like that. There are no mistakes in art, but happy accidents. But to some extent, you might want to correct things as you go sometimes, and it's just easier to do with a pencil. I mean, I can always paint over the black lines as well, but I don't want to make it so messy that I got to paint over again and then wait for it to dry, or accelerate the drying process or something. I try to just one fell swoop, as it were. So anyway, using some hatching and some cross hatching, contour lines to get some of the shading effects, some textures that will stay in the painting. Using a painting knife here. A lot of people call it a palette knife, but it's technically a painting knife. It's a very sharp point, flexible. And I'm using that to smudge in a lot of the paint that was on the knife when I was mixing it on the canvas, or on the palette. And here I'm just using the biggest brush that I have at the moment. It's just like a 1-inch brush, I think. It's not very big. And it makes nice broad strokes. And I just wanted to get like a base color down, kind of cut the shark in. And it's fine. I like painting over the line, so it's not a big deal if you paint over them a little bit. The black's going to show through because I have these paints mixed with flow medium, which is very thin. It's like a thinning agent for acrylics, for like pouring paint and things like that. And then I also have a matte fluid medium in there too, so that it gives a little bit more transparency. So between the two of those things and some of that slow dry to help extend the drying time, it behaves much more like almost like a gouache with acrylic drying. So I was trying to get a watercolor or a marker like effect where I can get nice blending. I'm just painting the sides here. I'm not a big fan of painting the sides, but my wife insists that I paint the sides of the paintings. A lot of people like to do that. Some galleries force you to do it, but these aren't gallery wrapped canvas anyway, so I don't expect myself to be hanging in a gallery. But for the sake of, this kind of painting where it's an underwater kind of effect, it's fine I don't mind doing it. Some of them I don't do it, just depends. If the majority of it is a very light color, I won't necessarily paint the edges, but anyway, that's just cutting them in right now. And I try to do this early with the sides of the painting because I don't want to have to go back and do it again later. That way, if I brush over the edges, it looks like I did it on purpose instead of having to go back and cover them up and be careful that you don't mess up the painting itself. So, and like I said, it's not a big deal. If you get close, you don't have to, like if you brush stroke over the lines, it's actually intentional in some cases. But here I just wanted to get it. I was experimenting. This is the first time I've tried this with this paint. I wasn't sure how transparent it was going to be on canvas, and I did test it, obviously. But trying to be as controlled. It's also good practice. I'm just trying to control as close as I can to the line with the big brush just to see how accurate I can be. It's kind of a goofy challenge for myself. Anyway, That's all I'm doing here, just cutting this in and getting the paint moved around a little bit. I try to put as random a stroke as I can to give more of like an abstract feel and in the background. And eventually I add color. It's not going to stay this flat. And you could very easily just use it like the fluid medium and thin it out a little bit more and just paint the whole shark and then paint over the top of that. But whatever. I know that now. I mean, I knew that then. I just didn't do it. I mean, I didn't want to overextend the paint too much and then not have if there's too much fluid in there, it won't bind right. At least that's what I've heard. I haven't tried that. So far, it's so good. I mean, I seal them anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. You know, I say that, but I don't know if I actually did for this painting. I think I actually might have bought the fluid after this painting, but nonetheless, it does have matte fluid in it, so it helped in the slow dry, which makes it thinner and it does make it more transparent. But eventually, I actually I thin them out much more for more transparency. Yep, just cutting little fishy guys in. He actually, the reference I was using to paint him, he had quite a few fish around him and stuff, and I just figured I'd just give him a couple buddies instead. Because, you know, when you're creating art, you don't have to paint exactly what you see. It's yours to do what you want. I just wanted to make it look like he's got a little posse floating around with him. And when I do the paint lines, I mean the ink lines as they were, technically they're acrylic pens, Posca pens. But I still try to treat it like it's an ink, so to speak, and cut in the lines where I think it's, you know, the most important places. That's when I pencil, I do that too. But then I use construction drawing and cut in all the detail as much as I can, and then go back with a pen and erase that stuff back. And you're usually just left with the ink. So with the kneaded eraser is what I was doing. And then, all right, so now I'm just adding in the sort of the mid-tone that I see. The majority of this shark is gray. And of course you could just paint it all gray, but that's not any fun, right? So I tried to do some of the reflection of this. Later on, you'll see I put some of the sort of a yellowish tone on the bottom of his belly, kind of reflecting from what's underneath him, the sand on the floor. But just getting the majority of the darker, sort of the mid-tone-ish range. That's pretty much what most people do. You go mid-tone, go light. But I wanted to get those mids there first, and that way I can kind of judge how light I want the rest of his body to be. And it's just, you know, it's a basic gray. I do have black, but I've been doing a lot more Payne's gray lately instead of pure black. It gives more natural looking shadows. But again, I was illustrating, so it's not as important. You can still cut in with blacks and all that stuff and just kind of bring them up and sort of tone them up a little bit more, or add more value, you know, more hue to them, and you'll get kind of a nicer shaded tone. It just kind of helps you to block it in. But again, sharks are gray. I mean, that's how they appear anyway. So he's starting to get a little bit more contour looking, a little more depth to him. And that way, so I can add the color there over top of the little hatch marks I did down there. But it still shows through, but it helps to give it darkness and texture, but also with that extra color. Something like I used to do. I used to take I would take black ink or even digitally and try to paint or try to draw and then ink everything and try to get all the shadow done with just the ink and all the highlights, and then I could just take one splash of color. It was always a challenge to myself to see how minimal I could do it, but still get some depth and realism out of it. So I kind of use that in these paintings, and it's kind of a blend between realism, comic illustration, and impressionism and abstract. I don't know. I just borrow from everybody. I just try to make it look cool. If I'm happy with it at the end, then that's all that really matters. Yeah, so again, just adding in the rest of his skin tone here. And I think I had adjusted the other little fish. The fish aren't exactly accurate to the photo. Not that big a deal. The point was the shark. And I'm quite happy with the way he came out. And yeah, see there, like how the paints want to blend a little easier than what they might normally do with acrylic. And I have more working time And because of the transparency, I can keep building up layers, and it looks much more like a marker would, or like a watercolor without it lifting, which is pretty cool, I think. But that's pretty much it, man. I'm just painting along. And eventually, I think I paint some of the overlines, like I said. And if you really want to push it, the way that I would do it before is, in the past, is just paint directly over the black line that you have painted down, and you'll still see it. It'll still be there, but it'll give you that impressionist, painterly, overly the overstroke kind of thing, where you don't hold the form together as much and kind of let it get loose, but the form is still there because your brain makes sense of it. It's a really cool illusion. I try to make these fish look more silvery blue because they're under the shadow of the big old shark that's above them, but also they do get some indirect reflective light on them, and so they're shiny. Yeah, here's the yellow. And I went a little hard on this yellow, I think, but see, that's the beauty of painting with acrylic, especially, is it dries quickly, and you can always tone it back or shade it down, or add different hues and things. If you really wanted to, you can just restart the whole canvas over with gesso if you want, but I always try to just push what I have and see if I can. That's kind of what that's what I always think Bob Ross meant too, is like there are no mistakes, in the sense that, okay, I put the wrong color yellow down, or it's too intense. Just tone it back a little bit until you're happy with it. And also let yourself make mistakes. Maybe like you didn't mean to put that specific color down or something, or you put too much down or whatever. Just work around it. I mean, that's the beauty of art, in my mind. Yeah, this is the ocean floor color. So this is something that John Silver mentions a lot, but this is true. They're the color harmony kind of thing, because I'm using the same yellow that's in his underbelly as the sand floor, which makes it believable to you that bright yellow would be there, because he's so close to the sand floor. So, and then I paint like there's like a cave or something in the background. I can't tell exactly what it is. It's just like some dark water behind him. So I just assume that it's a cave, but that's what I painted, like the impression of a cave. Abstract impression, however you want to think of it. Again, see, I started with like a gray, and I was like, it's a little too dark. I don't want the gray over there to compete with him too much. So just keep pushing it around until I was happy with it. It would be really wise of me to get a bigger brush, but I don't usually paint things this large. I do have a few that I've done recently that are larger, but normally I would paint on something like an 8x10 or 11x14, and I don't have any need for anything really, really big. But here, I mean, I'm tempted to get like a 2-inch brush. Not that that's really big, but certainly bigger than anything I have. And I also saw, again, I know I mentioned him a lot, but John Silver, I've been watching John Silver art stuff a lot lately, and he's really good. And good is not the word. The man's a freaking master. Anyway, he uses the silicone tool that I think would be really cool to try to use, but I've never used one. It just kind of scrapes the paint, similar to what a palette knife would do. So I guess you can paint with it too, which I think is interesting, and why not try it? Gotta try things. I do love to experiment. If you've been following me for any number of length of time, you probably noticed that by now, that I can't just leave well enough alone. I just gotta keep pushing myself, and not necessarily how I draw something, but like what I put down, what paint I use, what kind of medium I use, what I'm painting on, and sometimes the techniques of how I'm painting it, but not necessarily, approach to anatomy and stuff. I kind of keep that similar. I mean, a shark is a football, okay? That's what he is. Just so is everything to me is shapes. I think of a bird as a football. I think a shark as a football. Like, look, you could pick him up and throw him across the field. Tell me I'm wrong. He has fin and everything. He would spin. He'd fly through the air. Be hilarious. That's a new idea. Shark football. I'm going to make a shark football. You guys will buy it, right? Yeah, so here's where I was saying I was doing a little silvery looking fishy guys, because it gives it the impression that they're a part of the environment and they're reflecting a lot of that blue around them. They do have highlights of white, like a whitish highlight, to kind of show that they're reflective of whatever that light source is coming from. So as I can argue and be like, oh, well, you should know where your light source comes from. I mean, it's a picture. I don't know where exactly that light was coming from. It could have been directly overhead. Not sure. I'm talking about that comes off the fishies. They have little reflective shininess to them. It could also be, it could be environment lighting. It could also very well be that the shark himself is bright enough and they're shiny enough to reflect light coming off of him. I mean, I don't know for sure. I'm just going to assume that's true. Could also just be scattering light throughout. Light bounces all over the place in the ocean underneath the water. So, indirect light maybe. I don't know. Don't blame me. I don't know everything. My wife knows everything. I'm just kidding. Yep. Yeah, there it is. I was toning it back a little bit. And I'll step back and look at something. That's why there's a couple of pauses in here. I'll step back and look, walk out of the room, take a break, and make sure that I'm not staring at the same piece for too long, because your mind starts to play tricks on you, and you're like, there's nothing wrong with my painting. There's no flaws at all. Then you come back and look at it and you go, oh my God, that's terrible. So, do yourself a favor and do that too. It helps. At least that helps for me. I think here I'm just adding in some more dark tones that kind of pushes depth a little bit. I could pull apart all the things I don't like about a piece when I do it, like his tail. I was a little unhappy with the length of his tail and stuff. I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not going to stress over it. It looks anatomically correct, but I'm like, well, maybe he could have been a little longer, but you know what? It's artistic choice. That's what we're going to call it. Create and move on. That's all you can do. Just keep trying and keep pushing. Keep practicing. Hope you guys liked that. And if you did, give me a like, thumbs up, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.